to the MHR podcast, where we discuss all things in the world of work in HR, payroll and finance. I'm Emma.
And I'm Andy.
How are you this week?
Okay, yeah, good. We're rattling into June, aren't we? So
I know we said this last week, but I just can't get over how quick everything's going, you know?
We're halfway through the year. So I was wondering what you wanted to talk about.
So, because we're coming to the halfway point in the year, I've been having a look into kind of what's going on in the job market. We've got a big influx of graduates coming in.
Yeah.
Oh God!
Also, we've got an academic year ending as well, so there's a lot of kind of new talent that are probably leaving universities or leaving a form of education who are looking for what their next career opportunity might be.
No, exactly. So I just wanted to get a bit of a feel for what the job market kind of feels like right now. You know, there's been a lot of influx and changes over the past few years, and it's always really interesting to see how that presents itself at this time of year.
And I suppose at the start of this year as well, one of the things we did start talking about was employee experience. And we did do a bit of a review of what were the drivers for people wanting to stay in a job, about retention, or the reasons that people would look for a new job. It'd be interesting to see how that contrasts now.
Yeah, definitely. And I picked up on an article as I was kind of looking through all of the information, and it's really interesting to see how kind of perceptions of job preference have changed this time round. So something that we talked about earlier on in the year, which you just quite rightly mentioned, is looking at the importance of taking care of your mental health in the workplace. You know, looking at what businesses can do to ensure that there are appropriate mental health kind of facilities in place and outlets in place. And that was a big factor in considering where you wanted to work for. You wanted to work in a place where, you know, mental health is a big priority.
Yeah, and I also you want to feel like your business that you're going into or you're starting a career with or moving into a career with is in line with kind of what's happening socially as well. What conversations are businesses having? What are people having now? Like mental health awareness is becoming more and more at the forefront of like the business conversation as well. So if that's something that you value, you want to take part in that conversation, or you want to feel that yours is a priority for them, you don't want to work for a business that isn't having that discussion.
No, exactly. But interestingly, so in the past couple of years, there's a website, an organisation called Prospect, that does a survey on graduates every year as they come out of their time in education, to talk to them about what their kind of priorities are now they're going out into the marketplace, and now they're going out into the job place of what they are looking for in an employer. So all of those things that you've just mentioned there have been top of the list for the past couple of years. I think, again, that's a big reflection off the back of kind of COVID and trying to have a better kind of work-life balance and really feeling the effects of that probably from those around them. But interestingly, for the first time this year, so Prospects did a career survey this year of around 5,000 students. And as I say, mental health and motivation were their biggest challenges. But actually, for the first time this year, that's actually flipped on its head, and due to money worries, kind of financial gain is actually now at the top of the priority list. So they're finding that students are choosing career paths and even in certain instances choosing ongoing further education that is more accustomed to higher paying careers and roles as opposed to ones that they may prefer to go to, you know, based on what they've done so far. So money is becoming at the forefront of kind of what students are after.
That's interesting, isn't it? Because I suppose we've said it for years, and like you work in any businesses, and you know, and especially people who work in like payroll, or they'll say, you know, at the end of the day, we come to work because we want to get paid. And we've had discussions before where we've challenged that in the past. Actually, you know, there's different views on what people value in work, and is it all about what your return is, or is it about the other things you get? Is it the social stuff? And when we talked about our employee experience report at the start of the year, we were talking about different statistics, weren't we? And it did show that 70% of the people that we surveyed at MHR said that pay was the biggest factor as to why they would retain or move to different places, but we also showed that there was a different generational divide in where we prioritised well-being. And actually, I think it was that younger generations preferred well-being focused on, let's say mental health, mental well-being, and physical well-being was a higher priority, say with an older people. But I suppose what this proves is that younger generations are still prioritising the pay and the remittance as the key driving factor. And I suppose the survey that you've read are there contributing factors to that? Is it like...
Yeah, so around 2/5 of those that had kind of changed their mind and put kind of the finances as the top priority are putting that blame down to not only the cost of living crisis, as we've spoken about before, but also the rising cost of tuition fees as well. So in 2022, that it was surveyed that around 40% of graduates were looking to leave their role that they were currently into, their post-grad role, whether that be to move to another position, a high-paid position, or move back into further education. And there was a response on here now that's basically saying that people are now deciding against going into further education because of financial reasons. And there's also been a shift in those that are looking to go into further education, what they're also studying.
Okay.
So there was a good part here that says, for example, accounting, IT, cybersecurity, and property studies are all up around 15%.
Oh, okay.
Whilst courses associated with lower paying jobs, such as kind of PGCEs, nursing, and social work, are all down 20% from last year.
Okay.
So I just thought it was interesting how kind of quickly that shift can happen in accordance to what is kind of going on in the environment at the moment. And finances is a really big concern. I think we've spoken about this briefly on the podcast before. I think you and I have both been very transparent about the impact that the cost of living crisis has on our day-to-day, and I think it's also becoming much more of an open conversation sort of out in the world that this is something that we're all kind of feeling. And so I thought we could have a bit of a chat about what we think businesses can do to support their employees and their financial well-being.
Okay. Sounds like a good point to go have a breather then, and we can have a look at some useful tactics.
Mixing work with pleasure since 2022, the MHR podcast.
Okay, so with what we were just talking about there, with students making the decision to go for the more financially rewarding role as opposed to one that they may be more passionate about, I thought we could have a look at what businesses can do to improve financial well-being for their staff and still create that kind of attraction and also that retention for people who may be concerned about their kind of financial status, and avoid that risk of losing staff or not getting the staff that you want as a result of that.
Okay.
So we at MHR actually put together a great financial wellbeing checklist, and I do recommend that you guys do check it out. But I thought it'd be good to have a run through this as a starting point.
Let's go for it then. There's quite a few on here actually.
There is, and there's some really easy points, and I also think that there's some considerations here from a software point of view and from a processes point of view that I also think are really pertinent. So the first one that we've got here is offer a financial coach as an employee benefit.
That makes sense. I like that, because I suppose one of the benefits that most people typically expect is like health benefits, right? Mm-hmm. But if you're identifying financial implications as a factor of someone's well-being, then actually that ticks the same box. Financial well-being is important. Maybe we can offer some facilities to make sure that you're feeling like you're covered, you're protected, you have support. I get it.
No, definitely. And I think we were actually discussing this as a team this morning because we were talking about student loans and stuff. Certainly in my experience, I don't know about yourself, Andy, but I had no kind of coaching or training when I was at university about how to manage my money properly. You know, it's your first kind of foray into the wide world. You get your student loans and you get your grants, and there's no real, even though you have your rent to pay, there's no real sense of proper financial management. And I think certainly for graduates, as they move into a role, to have a benefit like that where they can have direction on how to better manage money would also be a huge support. It's not saying that they can't, obviously, you know, we're all, you know, like-minded people, but having that added support as you go into the marketplace of how to manage your money, I think is invaluable.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, like you say, recognising that people come from all ages or backgrounds where their exposure to that kind of education on their finances is going to be varied. Mine was certainly, my education on how to manage my finances was through university by spending far too much and then learning how to backtrack before I was left on my own in the wilderness of the real world. So yeah, I think that's a really good point.
No, I agree. I think learning how to stretch £10 for 2 weeks before you got paid again is just a bit of a nightmare, isn't it? So the next one that we've got is to let your employees access their pay before payday.
This is a hot topic at the moment.
This is a very hot topic. So this is a relatively new concept called earned wage access.
Yeah.
So this is basically a tool that allows your employees to access already earned pay before payday.
Yeah.
So, for example, if they have an unprecedented bill that comes in, say if there's a car repair, they know that they can withdraw money from that pot and use it kind of there and then when they need to.
It's something that's done. I think it's something that's coming a lot more relevant for a lot of people. I think it's something that has had its light shine on it through the cost of living crisis. It's something that's done. It's something that's prevalent for a lot of businesses, and there are a lot of things and factors that businesses need to be aware of. So how do you implement a solution like that? How do you make sure you're tracking your employee and spend data so you can present that? And I suppose it leads on to the next point in this checklist, which is being able to provide real-time pay information. So I could, as an employee, I can make a better decision on my personal finances, and acknowledging that work is where I get my money from, I can start to go, okay, if I can access how much I've earned this month, or how much I'm earning, or how maybe the decisions on my benefits or the way that I'm working is affecting my end result, or when I'm going to get paid or how I get paid, I can make more informed financial decisions in my personal life, and work is actually adding more value into that. So being able to see that any time throughout the month and the impact of my decisions throughout the month is really useful.
It's adding that extra level of education on budgeting and planning. I think you made a really good point there. And it just means that you have no kind of scaries, if you like, of kind of being, you know, paid less than you think, you know exactly what to expect, and you can therefore, you know, plan in accordance with that.
Especially if you're working in a role, so some people, maybe the majority of people listening to this, or the majority of people who work in maybe an office environment feel like, well, you know, it's the same for me every month. I get it. I do my time. I have my contract. But that's not how every business works.
No,
if you're working in a shift pattern, and it leads on to this next point as well, it's about how can I pre-plan the work I'm going to try and do, and how I'm going to log my hours with a company so I can make sure I'm on top of what I want to be doing financially. And one option that this checklist suggests for employees as well is to see if they can offer shift bidding or extra work opportunities. So if you do have a very flexible workforce that are kind of using their hours in very various ways, how do you create those opportunities for people to have full awareness of those and allow them to kind of reap the rewards of having kind of that flexible workforce in that sense?
Yeah, I think in hours-based and shift-based companies, you know, thinking in you know, manufacturing, logistics, supply chain, you know, retail, you know, those kind of areas, I think that's a really, really great opportunity. And more people are going to be vouching for that. You know, there are always going to be people that want overtime and the opportunity to pull in extra work, but they may not know that that's available. So it's just being very transparent with that and creating that opportunity for those that wish to take it. So the next one that we've got on here is interactive pay slips. So I think this builds on very nicely for what we were just talking about before, about having that kind of transparency as to what you're being paid, what your deductions are, and this will not only improve your financial education, understanding how, kind of taxes work, how, even for our graduates, they would talk about how student loan deductions work. But it also, again, just allows for that extra planning. I think when you see your pre-tax salary, that can be quite exciting, but in reality, we do need to understand that we do have these monthly contributions that we need to make as part of our infrastructure, and it just supports that education on creating that understanding.
Yeah, and what does that mean? Yeah, like you say, what does it mean for us? And we take it for granted as well. I remember the first few years, at least of my working life, I would see things on a pay slip. I didn't really understand what they meant, but I went, oh yeah, that's what happens. And it's like, again, it's part of that kind of financial education about, what these things do, how do they impact on what you're earning, and the ability, like we take it for granted, but the ability to put this into an interactive digital medium means they're accessible at any time. I don't have to wait till I have a envelope posted through my door with a blue slip on where I tear the sides off. And I look at these numbers that have been printed on some kind of fax paper.
You gyro.
I don't even know.
Like that, isn't it?
I don't even know. Now I can get it. I can go onto an app on my phone any time of the day. And I could be making some kind of weird, mental, serious financial decision, right? And I need to have, or I'm at a bank and they need to know something, or I'm going to an advisor, or I'm going whatever. And I could go, look, there, right now, that's the thing, that's my stuff. And that ease of information at any time on any platform is massively helpful.
It's a reference point, isn't it? And as I say, I think it's super, super important for education on financial management and actually understanding how your salary is used.
Yeah.
Thinking, just pulling it back to the conversation we were having earlier with the graduates, I think there is a misconception for those that are going into their first role whereby they will just see the top level figure for a position, but then not understand how that salary is actually broken down. So having the opportunity to be transparent and educate on how this works may actually not necessarily skew perception on, how good a wage is, but it may at least just give some understanding of how it all works and just give it that extra bit of context and just give you more of a feel for how it works in real life.
I like point 6 here on this financial wellbeing checklist. Get it right. Like, dead simple, pay people the right amount. But 44% of people would consider leaving their job if they weren't paid correctly. That's the negative impact. I mean, it should be basic, but it isn't. It's complex. We know that payroll is a complex thing to get right. Business is incredibly complex structures, some way more than others. So it's not as simple as you think just to get it right, but it's the fundamentals. You've got to do it. You have to get it right. Accuracy is absolutely a key because, like say, as soon as you get it wrong, people start moving away. The other thing I found really interesting here was just reviewing benefits and rewards. Dead simple. There are different expectations. We talked about this before on what, I think we did a podcast where we talked about pool tables and a tree house or whatever.
Daft benefits.
But what are the things that add value? Because a benefits and reward package, I usually financially supports that individual as well, right? It's not just it's great to have these options. It's a case of I can do the thing that I want to do as part of my work pay and package, and it doesn't come at such of a cost. So suddenly, yes, okay, that wage is really valuable to me, but what that wage also allows me to have as part of this benefit package is extra value. Are your benefits right? Are the rewards you're offering employees relevant to what people are looking for in the market now? If you're looking at, a few years worth of graduates come into the business, what are their views on what's important to them? Have you got the right packages in place?
That's a really poignant point. I think for businesses where they're trying to expand their employee benefits, again, being very transparent of what the value of those are in pounds and pence even. You're actually demonstrating that yes, whilst your basic salary is at this level, you also have these added benefits that are at this value. Think of things like dental, or as we talked about before, kind of like financial coaching, or you have access to mental health, facilities. You can have things like discounts in shops and things like that through this. So there's ways in which gain added value from your salary.
And we take it for granted, all of those, because we think, it's great that we've got them. Every business offers stuff like this. But it works really well for an employer when they list that. So if you have an interactive pay slip or you have an interactive pay area where you can access your real-time payroll, how you've been paid this month and what you've been signed up for, you make sure that the employee knows of this thing that you're paying for, the company is paying this much on your behalf. Because then actually, great. I can actually really see how much that is worth and how much I'm being supported on that. And I really value that contribution from the company is allowing me to have this benefit. So spelling it out, it sounds simple, but it's really good reminder. I've seen it on things that I've seen in the past. It's like, oh, brilliant! I didn't realise it cost that much, but I'm really glad the company can chip in, so I'm only paying this much a month to get this benefit.
It should be seen as a given, not necessarily a benefit, but even having that transparency with pensions.
Yeah.
The value in pounds and pence that you are getting from your business that are contributing to your pension, it is also an added value element on top of your wage as well.
Yeah. And I think the last one in here that's probably worth talking about is the use of salary modelling tools.
Yeah. So this is something that we as a business advocate for quite strongly, and it's something that we've been working with for quite a long time. But using insight from your pay data to review opportunities around salaries and how you can support financial planning. So this is just more of a kind of proactive way of assessing your current overhead, your current people spend, and looking at how that can be better distributed, looking for opportunities to increase pay and manage pay in different ways. And also, as I say, just kind of better budget for future, growth and that kind of thing. I think with salary modelling tools, what they allow you to avoid is being quite stagnant in your kind of planning strategy for salary. And I think that is something that businesses can fall guilty of. It's something we have to churn it out every month as part of payroll. And we will have, say, a formal review at a yearly level for quite a few businesses. But actually, this allows you to have a bit more of an agile approach to it.
Yeah.
So are there shifts in the marketplace, which means that we do need to reconsider what our current kind of salary model looks like?
Yeah.
We have the facilities in place to assess what we need to do there to make that work.
So I suppose one of the things that underpins this, and we've talked about it in previous episodes as well, is in order for you to provide a better financial well-being to your employees, firstly, you need to understand your employees.
Yeah.
To understand your employees, you need employee data. Mm-hmm. If you're capturing the right data, you can use that to create informed decisions. You can use informed decisions to make sure that you're allowing your employees to see the data that matters to them, to have access to the information that's relevant for them at any time, at any point. So they can feel like not only does the business understand their needs and values, but offers extra value to their life, because that's what we're here for ultimately, but also it's allowing us to make informed decisions based on the fact that that person who's paying for us and looking after us is actually going, you know what, I get you, I get how you work, the information we get on you is allowing us to grow the business as well. So it's a two-way relationship. But it's built on data, and it's built on insight, and it's built on communication. It seems like if we were to whittle down this podcast into like key themes every week across the year, data,
we have
use
a
it
recurring
right.
theme, don't we?
Communication, get it right, and understanding of employee needs.
The MHR podcast. Other podcasts are available, but why would you?
So Emma, your report about graduates and the change in need, the focus on financial wants, right? It's very much based on Gen Zers, right? Gen Zers coming into the workforce. We've talked about it before. Assistant to the assistant producer Tom is a Gen Zer. We always look to him for guidance.
We do.
Tom's actually sent me right now a list of generation breakdowns. And I was surprised how much I didn't understand about the different generations there are and that could be in the workforce. So you interested to hear in them?
Go on then.
Okay, right. So first of all, I'm going to go back as far as the silent generation because I think these are probably the latest that are still maybe potentially just about working. So these are born between 28 and 45. Oof. Yeah, do you know about them?
Our post-World War II babes.
Yeah, they are.
What's
They
that
kept
now?
themselves quiet, so silent
Oh.
generation. And then then baby boomers. I think this is quite a prominent one. Everyone knows that.
Yeah.
So my parents are boomers.
Mm-hmm.
So they've come about increased birth rates post World War II, hence why such a large generation. But they
Baby
are
boom.
probably one of the more prominent of generations, maybe still just about in the workforce, predominantly. Fastly followed by, guess who? Your Gen Xers.
Yeah.
65 to 80. Yeah. So if you're
Okay.
born between then, actually, this is probably the largest population.
I
Right?
would
yeah,
say so.
right. Used to describe lots of different subcultures within the generation since the 50s and 60s. So there's a lot of Gen X stuff going on there. You know.
Okay.
So interesting. And then big hitters here, millennials or Gen Ys. Yeah.
No, I prefer millennials.
Okay, so 81 to 96,
Mm-hmm.
right? Typically host podcasts.
Represent.
Yeah, and I've got a lot to say. Insufferable, some would say. Quickly
said
followed by Gen Zers, who we've been talking a bit about
Mm-hmm.
today, who typically can be found on the internet critiquing podcasts, I find. But that's
that's
because they
true.
don't like my opinion. And
I can see Tom's put in here as well. Obviously, the most superior generation with no bias at all from the person writing this email.
Thanks, Tom. And then followed, do you know what the next generation is after that? It's not talked about much yet because it's 2023 births onwards.
2023?
2013, sorry.
I was going to say.
Sorry, my Gen Y brain was failing then. 2013 onwards is Generation Alpha.
Alpha?
It's very presumptuous, isn't it?
Alpha?
They've not had much time to really prove themselves, but immediately they're Alpha.
Well, given that they are 10 and upward and downwards, then,
You can
you
look
know,
at it scientifically,
I
yeah.
really like to think that they're not in the workforce yet.
Yeah.
But
Start with beta at least first and
Oh.
then gain some confidence. That's what I would say to you.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, so they're expected to reach 2 billion in size by 2025. There'll be 2
God.
billion alphas out there.
Gordon Bennett, they're going to
king.
take over the world.
King of the beta males, I bow down to you and hope that you respect my space. So yeah, good luck out there in the TikTok field world. On that note, if you're any of them and you have any different views to our podcast, remember this is a Gen Y podcast and we don't value your opinion. Please
Thank
leave
you.
your comments for them to be deleted and edited later. That's how the world works. I'm sorry, it's tough and it's unfair, but get used to it. It gets worse.
You're listening to the MHR podcast. Well done.
No, I thought it was really useful to talk about. I do find that those checklists that we've done quite helpful because they're very action-based, and I think it's
Yeah.
easy for a business to kind of interpret the level that they need from those checklists. So if you are interested in anything we've discussed today, you can find our wellbeing checklists on our websites. There's a mental health one, there's a wellbeing one about workplace, as well as physical checklist as well. So do check them out. Otherwise, you can find the rest of everything that we do at mhrglobal.com or on social media. So I've been Andy.
And I've been Emma.
See you in a bit.
Laters.